Good morning and welcome to Wake Up America. It is Thursday, June 1st. I'm Allison Maloney. Rob Finnerty is off today.
And I'm John Glasgow, sitting in for Rob Finnerty. Here are some of the stories that we are following for you today.
We start in Iowa, where Florida Governor Ron DeSantis continues his campaign for the White House, calling out the flaws in the Biden administration. He heads to New Hampshire today as former President Trump makes his way to Iowa.
Plus, 3 more GOP governors vow to send their state National Guard or other state law enforcement to the U.S. border. The announcement brings the number to at least 8 Republican-led states to offer assistance. And there's this.
Tensions are high in the war in Ukraine as screaming children run down streets in Kyiv during Russian daytime strikes. 3 people were killed in a Russia attack overnight. President Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to join NATO. But first, we start with the debt ceiling. Let's welcome in commentary editor from Washington Times, Kelly Sadler, and St. Louis radio host Christopher Arps. Thanks for joining us this morning. So House Speaker Kevin McCarthy spoke after the debt ceiling vote. Here's what he had to say.
People look at me and say, why are you always an optimist? Because I know, as an American, tomorrow will be better than today. I had to be an optimist that every day I woke up and said, maybe today the president would change his mind. Maybe today he'd want to put the country first. Maybe today he'd want to meet. But he never did. Not until our entire conference passed the bill.
So, Kelly, 71 Republicans did vote against the bill, more than, I think, what he had anticipated. What do you think of McCarthy's job so far, and is this the best that we would get, do you think?
I do believe it's the best we can get. Could we have gotten more? I don't know. It's easy to play, Monday morning quarterback. We don't have a huge majority in the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy only has a 4-vote majority, a 4-member majority, and so it's very slim. And, the bottom line with this entire negotiation was that Joe Biden said that there would be no negotiations back in February. He said he would not sit down with Kevin McCarthy. He said he wanted a clean debt ceiling. He didn't want any cuts to spending whatsoever. And they maintained this up until the point where Kevin McCarthy and the House leadership passed their first bill, tying the debt ceiling with spending cuts. Now, is this new bill a Fiscal Responsibility Act? Everything the old bill was? No, it's not. But we still have some wins in clawing back the COVID funding, clawing back some funding for the IRS, making sure that, we're not going to spend more next year than we did this year. And that's the first time that has happened in Washington, D.C. in decades.
Yeah, we're seeing that compromise there. Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC says the Democrats are the ones victorious on this bill, not the Republicans. Let's listen here.
Republicans voted against it, and only 46 Democrats voted against it. More Democrats supported this bill than Republicans because this was a win for Democrats. The Republicans could have insisted on only a 6-month extension on the debt ceiling, 1 year, so that they could come back 1 year from now and pound Joe Biden again in a negotiation like this. But Kevin McCarthy gave up because Kevin McCarthy did not want to come back to that room.
Chris, he says Kevin McCarthy gave up. Do you agree with that statement?
I do not agree with that. Lawrence O'Donnell is shilling big time for the White House. If you listen to the Democrats from AOC on down, all of them are not happy with this bill. You remember before this bill was even voted on, Democrats are saying that there's nothing in this bill for them. So I think Lawrence O'Donnell is kind of shilling a little bit too much for the White House. No one believes that. One thing that does concern me, though, is there's a report in Axios that says that Speaker McCarthy and Hakeem Jeffries cut a deal to provide earmarks for some Democrats in order to get their votes. We'll find out about that later if that's true. If that is, it's concerning. But I think overall, this is a win for Kevin McCarthy. This was the best deal that he could get under these circumstances.
Yeah, I think it's all about compromise, too. So it heads to the Senate, and we'll see what happens. It sounds like it's going to pass there as well. All right, I want to talk now about the presidential race. Ron DeSantis in Iowa once again. He'll be in New Hampshire today. Reports now saying Chris Christie will announce next Tuesday. And yesterday, we heard that former Vice President Mike Pence, he's going to join the race and announce next week in Iowa. Kelly, we've got a lot of people throwing their hat in the race. Does this help former President Donald Trump?
Yes, it does, because everyone who's throwing their hat in the race is going after the never Trump vote, and they're going to split it amongst themselves. Donald Trump is in command of 30% of the Republican Party. He has a 30-plus polling lead, percentage point polling lead over the nearest rival, and that's Ron DeSantis. We'll see if that changes. There's going to be debates this summer. It's still very early in the contest, but Donald Trump has a commanding lead within the Republican Party thus far. As I said before, things can change, but right now, the more people that enter the race, the more that they're splitting the votes among themselves, and that looks promising for Donald Trump.
So if that's the case, Chris, I mean, we know that the margin for the field is getting it's getting a little watered down, if you will. Trump leading right now all the polls, but in 2016, he did start with 1%. Can someone like Ron DeSantis pull this miracle off like he did, or is that margin too much right now?
Well, Ron DeSantis, he starts with pretty good name recognition from the huge blowout win that he had in February. He's starting to get his name recognition up some more. Donald Trump, even though he started at 1%, was very well known. There's only one Donald Trump that's going to be able to set the field on fire like he did and go all the way to the top. What's going to be interesting in Iowa, especially for Mike Pence, is he is going to be courting the evangelical vote. That's also going to be a vote that Senator Tim Scott is going to be going for, and also Ron DeSantis. That's who he is focusing a lot of his efforts on, is the evangelical vote in Iowa. And it'll be interesting to see, with those three candidates vying for that, who will eventually end up getting that vote.
Yeah, so much can happen in this time frame. It's so early on, and we all know what can change. All right, so Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about what President Biden's top priorities are. Kelly, here's what she had to say.
What is President Biden's top domestic priority?
Well, we've always been very clear that his economic policy is something that's important, especially when he walked into this administration. The economy was on its head because of the COVID response that was not existing and not with the last administration, and what the president had to do, right, to make sure that we were dealing with COVID, to make sure that we were dealing with the economy. And so he put forth, along with Democrats and also in a bipartisan way, some historic pieces of legislation.
Oh, Kelly, every time I watch her press conference. So the economy was on its head when he took over. What was the inflation rate? What were gas prices? What were interest rates? And she really struggles to answer questions from a lot of the media unless they're easy softball questions. And she's blaming the former administration. She's continuing to do that. How long is this going to work?
It doesn't work, right? And poll after poll shows that Joe Biden's underwater when it comes to his handling of the economy. There was a recent poll where only 26% of respondents said that they approved of the job that he was doing on the economy. Consumers are feeling pinched. You have high interest rates. You've got grocery costs that are almost more than double than they were when President Joe Biden entered office. Gas prices have been fluctuating, but they're still higher than they were when Joe Biden stepped in office. And Republicans have a good economic message to put forward for 2024. The spending, the COVID relief, and the spending that has come out of Joe Biden's administration has fueled inflation and made lives tougher on the majority of Americans. And we need tax cuts. We need economic growth. We need to stop the insanity of the spending bills that are coming out of Washington, D.C. And I think that is a winning message. It's a pocketbook message that the GOP, primary voters will be responsive to, as well as the candidates need to address every day on the campaign trail.
Yeah, that's affecting everyday Americans for sure. Kelly and Chris, great stuff today. Thank you so much.